Is Delny a worthy successor to Khabarovsk, or is it destined for the bin? We'll find out in today's episode of Best and the Worst. Today I'm trying out a new format to effectively evaluate ships and help you decide whether it would be a good pick or not. In this series, I record 5 games of the ship, in this case Delny, and show you the highlights from the best and worst from those 5, where I'll be able to highlight all of the good and bad points of the ship. From the last 5 games played, this was our best, and this was our worst. We'll start off by looking at our best game. And here we are a couple of minutes into the game, and we are getting straight into the action. At the moment we are just annoying this Yamato and doing what this ship excels at. And that's just pretty much continuous damage dealing. Now you can also see we have got torpedoes coming in, which are also very good, but we'll talk about that in a short period of time. Now that 6,000 damage we just took from the Yamato, that would have been amazing if we did have Adrenaline Rush, but we don't in this game. My skills are currently on screen, it's a 15-point commander, but once you do get Adrenaline Rush, it is absolutely perfect because it just really increases your damage per minute and just means you can get even higher damage games. But even going with this sort of build, you can see how much damage I was able to get, so it's still definitely viable to go for a gunboat build. Now torpedoes are viable, and yeah, we did just skip across because this is a full 20-minute game, so I'm just skipping the parts where not too much is happening, and so I thought, okay, we're now moving on to the Kremlin, going to farm him until they go behind the island. But I've got to say, this ship, it is definitely a worthy success to Khabarovsk because it just plays incredibly well. Now, of course, if you do enjoy a Khabarovsk and that's your preferred playstyle, then I'd still recommend trying Delny out and seeing how it goes because it is just a really fun ship to play. I mean, my personal playstyle is open water gunboating, but if you really are someone who just doesn't like that sort of style of play and you want to go for torpedoes, that's also quite possible too, because you've got 10km torpedoes and it's very possible to go for a stealth build and go entirely for torpedoes. But I mean, in my opinion, that's not the optimal build, but it really more depends on what your preferential playstyle is. But mine is more just sailing out in the open and harassing anything I can, especially slow moving targets like this Poison and Yamato, which I'm just helping at the moment because the Kurfürst, Shiki and Yamato are, they're just, well, these are the only things in their way at the moment, and because we are currently losing, if you look on the map, the enemies have got the A and B point, the Smarland is also going for the C point, and everyone else is retreating, so if I'm able to help just chunk these guys down with the additional damage, and already we're about halfway through the game at 100,000 damage, so definitely doing quite well, but if I can help to knock these guys out quickly, that is going to be perfect. Now, with that Poison dead, we can start moving on to the Yamato, and just do the exact same thing here, and start pushing and hopefully gain a bit more map control, as well as some more points. But I've got to say, going for a full gun build, once you do get Adrenaline Rush, it just makes it even nicer, because the further you get into the game, granted you don't just die in the first few minutes, and that's where the worst game we'll be looking at later will come in, because it's more just the fact that I play quite badly. But in terms of the ship itself, I really do quite like it. Now, unfortunately, our Kurfürst has died, so that means we're just even, well, we've got an even worse disadvantage, so I'm like, okay, we might as well try and get this Smarland as well, because the Yamato's behind the island, Venezia is quite far out of range, and the Smarland is the biggest target. But this is one of the things I do struggle with, is long-range firing at destroyers, because they're able to just very easily go left, right, and avoid your shots, so if they deviate anywhere away from where you're shooting, then there's a good chance they're going to dodge it, because your shells, at this sort of range, it is definitely going to be harder to hit, because as you can see, I've got 15.8 kilometers of range, which is quite frankly amazing. That's getting into cruiser ranges, but you don't have the vulnerability of having a citadel, so overall, very nice indeed. Now, we do have to dodge these torpedoes, but we are very clear, and since the Venezia is focusing on the Yamato, I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to try and help knock them out, because if the Venezia gets torpedoes off and the Yamato's unlucky, then that's going to be very bad news for us. And plus, the Venezia's guns are turning the other way, because if they did decide to start firing at us, we'd probably lose another half of our HP, because that SAP can absolutely rip you in half. But thankfully the Venezia is going down, and it's actually the Shikishima that manages to confirm that kill, just like to confirm the Smarland, and now we've skipped ahead again. So because this side is pretty much clear now, the Venezia is gone, I'm like, right, I need to get into this cap. I'm going to try and start pushing this Republic away, because they have got a lot of HP, and also they are aiming at us, which is good because it takes some of the heat off the Shikishima, which means they can just continue firing. But I'm like, okay, we're going to also try and block the cap, because if you look, we're not doing too well. We've now got the Hindenburg and soon to be the Marceau going into the D cap, and at the same time that would mean we'd have no cap, so at least if I can flip the Charlie cap, that's going to give us a bit of an advantage, or at least keep us in the game for longer. Now the Marceau is also just started appearing and started firing, and you can see the amount of lead. It's going to take about 5 seconds for the shells to land there, but I'm giving about 10 seconds a lead, just indicating how quick those French destroyers go, and even now I'm not giving enough lead. So at 10 kilometers, it's a lot easier to do, but as soon as they start going further away, you'll see I'm just really struggling to get these hits in, and I guess that's more from inexperience, but at the same time it's just the fact that it's just quite hard to shoot some of these ships. But now you can see now the Marceau, 2000 HP, I'm like, okay, well, might as well just keep on firing since we're getting the bonus for reload whilst we're spotted, and they actually go unspotted there, but if you'll notice, we do get a couple of shots in a second. There we go, managed to get 3 shots there, get them down to 1000 HP, and impressively, actually the Halland is gunning down a Marceau. That's something you don't see every day. Usually you'd think the Marceau would be able to outgun a Halland, but no, the Halland actually manages to kill the Marceau, and we have recovered the D cap as well. So now it's pretty equal on caps, and at this point I'm like, well, there's going to be nothing really there to stop me. There is an enemy Republique, which appears to be running a secondary build possibly, and the enemy carrier which has just come up now, which is perfect for me. So I load armor piercing and I just really start blasting, and again, if I had adrenaline rush I'd be getting these shots even faster and getting more damage, but even so I'm quite happy with how this is going, and we are also getting some fires. Unfortunately, because that is a carrier, we don't actually get a fire because it gets put out instantly, but even so, the fire chance is pretty okay. I mean, some games you'll get maybe 15, you get a decent amount, and then others you'll get something like 2, 3 or 4, just because it depends on the roll of the dice, but overall it is pretty decent. Now, the enemy carrier is going for us at the moment because, well, we're taking another one of their caps, so it's in his best interest to stop us from getting this cap, and at the same time, I'm also getting very close to where this Nakhimov is going, and if they are realising, well, they probably do realise that I'm coming around this corner, so in a second we'll probably spot them once the carrier does come over, but whilst we are able to see this Republique and also cap this point, might as well try and cap it, and at the same time fire at the Republique whilst their guns are turned away. Now, 30 seconds left and we are skipping ahead. I did turn off my anti-air because I'm like, oh, you know what, it doesn't look like they're going for me, and honestly I don't know why the carrier didn't go for me in this instance. They instead went for the Yamato for some reason, but they have realised their mistake. They are starting to turn to their right, but you can probably already see with the distance that I am from this Nakhimov, it's not going to be lasting too long because I'm going to be able to absolutely shred into it. Now, start turning in, so I'm getting ready just to start firing at it, but 51,000 HP and plus it's got a Yamato to its side, or behind it, sorry, so they are not going to be lasting long at all. Now, the skip bombers, they do appear to be going for, well, me at the moment, and in terms of the anti-air, I've got to say it's quite good. The anti-air on this ship it does a lot of damage, but unfortunately, with how carriers are in this game, even if you are getting monstrous amounts of damage, it's not always going to do something. I mean, I think one game a while ago, I was being focused by one of the new carriers. I think it was the Eagle, and was it the Eagle or was it the United States? It might be in the United States, but anyway, the entire game I was just being focused, and I was just pretty much behind an island in a cap, and it was absolute hell. So the anti-air, it can't just single-handedly stop a carrier, but it's still, if you have got some other ships near you, then you can definitely make a no-fly zone, and whilst we've been talking, we have been just running this carrier down, getting up to 175,000 damage, and that is the kill confirmed. They do get some shots off from the rocket attack planes, but they don't manage to do any damage, which is quite nice, so that just leaves us now to farm the Republique. And this is basically going to be the next 2 minutes and 20 seconds, but I quite enjoyed these 2 minutes and 20 seconds because it's just farming this Republique, and we're just able to really rack up this damage number. Now at this point we do manage to get a fire, and we're keeping with the high explosive because it's like, okay, we'll try and get another one, wait for them to actually repair that fire, and at this point I'm just trying to duke their shells. Now, of course, the Republique does have a decent reload, so we've got to be more careful, but I do make a mistake more towards the end of this because I'm like, oh yeah, we'll be fine, and get a bit cocky, but even so, as it's going, we're getting a really nice amount of damage, and as you can just see, we're just able to sort of pinpoint accuracy. Yeah, here we go. We managed to also dodge these shells here, and this is where I am sort of twixt between going for Adrenaline Rush and a different skill after this, but I think I'm purely going to be going for DPM mainly, and instead I'm going to be investing in a coal mod for the upgrade onto the yeah, here we go, we've got some more shells coming in, and we did actually manage to get a Wither reward with the 8 fires so far, which is really quite nice, but I'm probably going to go for the coal mod just so we can get a better consumable for the engine boost. Now, the Halland is also dropping some torpedoes, but it looks like the Republique managed to pretty much dodge every single one there, and we're just going to continue firing, and yeah, here we go, this is where the shells start getting a lot closer, and we get very lucky there as it just incapacitates us, and this Republique is probably hating me right now. because every single shot he's just done to me is pretty much done absolutely nothing, but that will change very soon because as you can see we are getting a bit too close. Now I noticed that this Republic is still coming towards us and they are within 10 kilometers, so I'm like, well, you know what, I might as well drop some torpedoes. It might be long enough. I mean, there's only about 45 seconds left, but I'm like, yeah, okay, we might as well chuck some in just in case we can't kill it with our guns. And at the speed we're going, you're probably thinking, come on, fire some armor piercing, look at the range you're at. But, well, there we go, we actually do start loading armor piercing, but I was trying to initially get, and here come the shells. Yeah, there we go, that's the ones that smack us. But I was trying to get some fires, you know, get a perma-fire, but then I'm like, actually, with this much time left, I might as well just go straight to armor piercing, and honestly, kind of wish I'd done that a bit sooner, because you can now see us getting nearly 3,000 damage, that salvo, and yeah, 3,000 HP, 9 kilometers away, yeah, 700 HP, that's very close, but remember those torpedoes I launched? Yep, here they come, and they finish off the target, and that is the game. And with such a good looking result screen, that game perfectly displays Delny's strengths. As a summary, it can constantly rain fire at extreme range, with consistent delivery on a majority of targets, good enough torpedoes that allow for both offensive and defensive utilisation, i.e. they work when you're either pushing or falling back, a decent health pool with an amazing heal, that gives it some real durability in games, and finally that speed boost gives it a real edge. All in all, it's an amazing support ship which I think most gunboat fans should enjoy. Of course, there are also some downsides which you may have noticed in that game. The first being that Delny can be spotted from pretty great distances, even when spec'd for stealth as mentioned earlier. You're also going to need to heavily invest in the guns to make the most of them, as range is pretty much essential, plus you need to get as many boosts to the reload as possible to get a decent DPM. And whilst on the topic of reload, that is still going to be quite high compared to other gunboats, such as Smarland, and getting into closer range engagement can still be rather dangerous, even with a heal to mitigate that damage, so it is best to take on those 1v1s when you know that you can beat that ship. Now, with that in mind, that brings us on to our worst game with that exact situation. And here we are, and at a decent range you can see we're currently shooting at the Shimakaze, and this is what I'm talking about when I say you want to pick a fight which you know you can certainly win, and the Delny can certainly outgun a Shimakaze, so it'll be quite interesting to see what happens once this gets reintroduced in a few minutes. Now, as for what we're doing at the moment, we're just heading towards the A cap, and whilst nothing is really going on at the moment, it's like, okay, anything that comes into range we might as well start shooting at, and that is the Montana for now, since they have just come into our view. Now, I'm loading high explosive and hopefully going to get a fire on them, which they'll put out, and then hopefully we'll be able to set another one, but because they are getting just behind this island, I mean, we do just get a fire there, but because they're going behind the island, we do have to switch target onto the Colombo instead, and instead hope we get a fire there. Now, as I was saying about the Shimakaze, you know, you'd think, oh, well, I can easily outgun it, there's no way they come around the corner. I'm very focused on this Colombo. All of a sudden, yeah, the Shimakaze has pushed out in front of me and a Des Moines, which honestly is a very confusing play. They do get some torpedoes out, and this is where the speed boost pretty much saves us. As you can see, this is very close here, but with 11,000 HP, I've got 17,000, this is something I should certainly win, but this is effectively what you should not do. This is a massive mess up on my end, because instead of turning away and being the smallest possible angle to hit, I go completely side on, making it very easy for the Shimakaze to shoot us. So even though we are using heal and this guy is on 6,000 HP, 5,000 now, they are still able to get a really nice amount of shots and get a decent amount of damage on us because we are just showing them so much side, and as you can see, thousands of HP are being lost. Now, of course, we do still win this gunfight because, of course, we've got the support of Des Moines there as well, but in terms of playing, that was pretty much exactly how you shouldn't play this. Instead, if you're going in engagements like that, and honestly, if you are going in any engagement in a destroyer fight, is you want to be turning away, firing at the other enemy destroyer, and at that point you'll be harder to hit. You can sort of wiggle a bit whilst at the same time you're going to be able to maintain a decent firing angle and hopefully get a decent amount of damage on the destroyer you're fighting. Now, with that Shimakaze gone and the cap is now ours, I'm just thinking, okay, I'll sit inside the smoke, and whilst the Colombo is spotted, I'm like, okay, I'll start firing on them. But because we are in smoke, we don't actually get to see the Colombo, so we're just sort of waiting for them to either reappear or we may have to just spot them instead. And with 9 seconds left, I'm thinking, well, I may as well do that myself. I am a destroyer after all, so we'll just get out of the smoke and we'll start spotting this Colombo. as we do manage to get the first cap. And in terms of how we're playing, honestly, we're not playing too badly at the moment. It's more just really of a defensive measure, and since the gunboat is running away anyway, I'm like, okay, I'll try and get some shots off, because we'll have them for a couple of kilometers before they go out of our firing range. Now, the one thing is the gunboat is pretty decently armoured, so you're going to notice that alongside my aim's a little bit bad. I mean, I guess I can argue this was my first game of the day, so I was a little bit rusty, but even so, you can see it's we're getting quite a few non-penetrations and shatters and stuff like that, but at the same time our aim is also pretty bad, so we could at least be getting some fires if we were actually able to hit these. And whilst we've been missing these shots, unfortunately, yeah, they're pretty much out of our range, so soon we won't even be able to do anything to them. But at the moment, as you can see, there is a Sevastopol which is coming towards us instead, which is probably going to provide a much larger problem, and they do come into this game later on as well. Now, thankfully, they are sailing away, and I do have an island to go behind, and you can see they've been absolutely smacked by something, so at this point, I'm like, okay, I can easily start pushing forward, and although that danger has gone, we now have an enemy Salem, and I thought, well, I might as well start gunboating it, but this is where I actually start doing what you should have been doing initially, which is turning away from a target. Of course, if I was to go straight towards it, that would effectively be suicide and probably the most stupid play you could do, but effectively just imagine this is what you're doing with another destroyer, just with a bit more wiggling, and thankfully the Salem no longer can see me, so it's just a fact of, okay, I can just start turning back in. But at the same time, I did fail to notice that the enemy carrier is there, and you're going to see that as I say, the anti-air, it does a decent amount of damage, but against tier 10 carriers, it doesn't really have enough punch. I mean, you saw how long that carrier is just in our AA range, and we didn't knock out a single one. Unfortunately, the gap isn't quite big enough here, so we do lose a decent chunk of HP there for what could effectively be a very easy dodge, but at the same time we do just need to get in cover because the Sevastopol has healed up from about 1000 HP, so at this point I'm like, okay, we're just going to have to get into the cover of the island, and thankfully we do manage to avoid those torpedoes. Is one thing you should do when you've got torpedo bombers coming in is effectively try and get your nose or your stern facing them, because you're going to be it's going to be a lot easier for you to actually dodge those torpedoes, whereas if you're side on, it's going to be a lot harder to. Now at this point I'm like, okay, well, we've got a Sevastopol, a Salem, and a Khabarovsk right in this cap right now, with pretty much no support at the moment close on, or at least the Des Moines can't really do too much once they push past this island like this Khabarovsk does. But my issue wasn't actually with this DD. So you can see we're actually able to knock out a load of HP from this Khabarovsk, and we are definitely destined to win this gunfight. But you'll notice on the minimap, we've got skip bombers coming in. So although we've got the advantage on HP, skip bombers hit, we now have the disadvantage, and yeah, we would have won that, but the Khabarovsk manages to get some shots over, and we do actually die. Now, the kill does get confirmed there, but that pretty much is the game. Thankfully, we did end up winning that game, and although it was short, our worst game did highlight some of the issues that the ship faces, and you were also able to see some of the things that you should aim to avoid doing in this ship. Now, hopefully this format of video has provided some value, so in future I will be using this to briefly review ships, and that does get us onto the next topic, which is the next video, where I take a first look at the German battleship Poison.